Tuesday, 7:43 p.m. I found the letters in a shoebox hidden at the back of my late grandfather's closet. 47 letters, each one dated with a Tuesday, spanning over 3 years, all written in the same delicate handwriting, all signed with just one letter, E. I waited for you again today. Same bench, same time, you didn't come, but I'll be there next Tuesday, I always am. E. My grandfather had died 2 weeks ago at the age of 89. I was helping my grandmother sort through his belongings when I found them. She was in the kitchen making tea when I opened the first letter. My hands trembled as I read through them. Letter after letter, year after year, every single Tuesday. Someone had waited for my grandfather for 3 years, every Tuesday, and he had kept every letter hidden away like a secret treasure. Grandma, I called out, my voice shaking. Who is he? My grandmother appeared in the doorway, her face pale as she saw what I was holding. Put those away, David, she said quietly. That's not your business. Grandma, someone waited for Grandpa every Tuesday for 3 years. I think it is my business. Who is he? She closed her eyes, and when she opened them, they were filled with tears. Her name was Eleanor, she whispered. And yes, she waited for him every Tuesday until the day she died. Why was Grandpa? I couldn't finish the question. No, Grandma said firmly. Your grandfather was the most faithful man I ever knew, but Eleanor's story is complicated. Sit down, David. If you want to know the truth, I'll tell you everything. But once you know, you can't unknow it. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the letters still clutched in my hands. Start from the beginning, I said. And she did. My grandfather, Thomas, was 22 years old when he met Eleanor for the first time. It was a Tuesday in June, and he was sitting on a bench in Central Park, reading a book about architecture. He had just finished his service in the Korean War and was trying to figure out what to do with his life. Excuse me, a soft voice said. Is this seat taken? Thomas looked up and saw her. Eleanor was beautiful in the way classic Hollywood actresses were beautiful, dark hair, fair skin, bright blue eyes that seemed to see right through you. She wore a yellow sundress and carried a small bag. No, please, Thomas said, moving his books to make room. Sit down. Thank you. She sat gracefully, folding her hands in her lap. Beautiful day, isn't it? It is, Thomas agreed, though he could barely focus on the weather. He was too busy trying not to stare at her. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Eleanor spoke again. What are you reading? Thomas showed her the cover. Architecture of the Modern World. I'm thinking about becoming an architect. That's wonderful, Eleanor said, her face lighting up. My father is an architect. He designs buildings all over the city. Really? What's his name? Richard Ashford. Thomas's eyes widened. Richard Ashford was one of the most famous architects in New York. Everyone in the field knew his name. You're Richard Ashford's daughter, Thomas asked in disbelief. Eleanor smiled sadly. Yes, though sometimes I wish I wasn't. Why would you say that? Because being Richard Ashford's daughter means my whole life is planned out. Who I should marry, where I should live, what I should do. There's no room for what I want. Thomas didn't know what to say to that, so he just listened as Eleanor talked. She told him about growing up in a mansion on Fifth Avenue, about the private schools and the society parties, about how everything looked perfect from the outside, but felt empty inside. I'm sorry, Eleanor said after a while. I shouldn't be bothering you with my problems. You're a complete stranger. Sometimes it's easier to talk to strangers, Thomas said. They don't judge you the same way. Eleanor looked at him then, really looked at him and smiled. You're very kind. What's your name? Thomas Bennett. It's nice to meet you, Thomas Bennett. I'm Eleanor. They talked for over an hour. Thomas learned that Eleanor was 20 years old, loved to read poetry, played piano, and dreamed of becoming a teacher. But her father had other plans. She was engaged to be married to a banker's son named Charles Whitmore, a man she didn't love but couldn't refuse. The wedding is in 3 months, Eleanor said quietly. September 15th. Do you want to marry him? Thomas asked, though he already knew the answer. No, but what I want doesn't matter. My father has decided, and that's that. As the afternoon wore on, Thomas found himself not wanting the conversation to end. There was something about Eleanor, her sadness, her intelligence, her desperate need to be heard, that drew him in. I come here every Tuesday, Eleanor said suddenly. To this bench. It's the one place my father's driver lets me go alone. He thinks I'm visiting the library, but really, I just come here to be free for a little while. Every Tuesday, Thomas repeated. Every Tuesday at 3 o'clock. It's the one constant in my controlled life. Thomas looked at his watch. It was already past 5. I should probably go, he said reluctantly. Me too, Eleanor said, standing up. Thank you for listening, Thomas. It was really nice to talk to someone who saw me as just Eleanor, not Richard Ashford's daughter. Maybe I'll see you again, Thomas said, trying to sound casual even though his heart was racing. Eleanor smiled. Maybe I'll be here next Tuesday. That night, Thomas couldn't stop thinking about Eleanor, her sad blue eyes, her desperate need for freedom, the way she had talked about her arranged marriage like it was a prison sentence. He told himself he wouldn't go back. Getting involved with an engaged woman, especially one from such a prominent family, was a terrible idea. But when Tuesday came around again, Thomas found himself walking to Central Park at 3 o'clock. And Eleanor was there, sitting on the same bench, waiting. For the next 3 months, Thomas and Eleanor met every Tuesday at 3 o'clock on that same bench in Central Park. They never planned it explicitly. Neither of them ever said, I'll see you next Tuesday. But every week they were both there. They talked about everything. Thomas told Eleanor about growing up poor in Brooklyn, about his time in the war, about his dreams of building beautiful things. Eleanor told Thomas about the books she read in secret, the music she played when no one was listening, the life she dreamed of living if she had been born someone else. Sometimes I imagine just running away, Eleanor confessed one Tuesday in August. Getting on a bus and going somewhere my father would never find me. Why don't you? Thomas asked. Because I'm a coward, Eleanor said simply. And because running away wouldn't change who I am. I'd still be Richard Ashford's daughter. That's something I can't escape. You're not a coward, Thomas said firmly. You're brave enough to admit what you want. That's more than most people can do. They never touched, never held hands, never even sat too close. But there was an intimacy in their conversations that went deeper than physical contact. They were sharing their souls, their dreams, their fears. Thomas fell in love with her. He tried not to, but it was impossible. Every Tuesday, he fell a little deeper, and he could tell Eleanor felt the same way, even though neither of them said it out loud. The wedding was approaching. September 15th was circled on Thomas's calendar like a death sentence. He didn't know what would happen after that. Would Eleanor still come to the park? Would she be allowed to? On the first Tuesday in September, just 2 weeks before the wedding, Eleanor arrived with tears streaming down her face. "Eleanor, what's wrong?" Thomas asked, alarmed. "I can't do this," she sobbed. "I can't marry Charles. I don't love him. I'll never love him. But my father won't listen. He says it's already arranged, the invitations are sent, the church is booked. I'm trapped, Thomas, completely trapped." Thomas did something he had never done before. He took Eleanor's hand. "Then don't do it," he said. "Run away with me." Eleanor looked at him in shock. "What?" "Run away with me," Thomas repeated, more forcefully this time. "We'll leave New York, go somewhere your father can't find us. Start over somewhere new. I don't have much money, but I can work. I can take care of you." "Thomas," Eleanor whispered, fresh tears falling. "I love you, Eleanor. I've loved you since that first Tuesday. Come with me, please." Eleanor closed her eyes, and for a moment, Thomas thought she might say yes. But when she opened them again, he saw the resignation there. "I can't," she said. "I'm so sorry, Thomas, but I can't. My father. He's a powerful man. He would find us. And when he did, he would destroy you. Your dreams of being an architect, your whole future, he would take it all away. I can't let you sacrifice everything for me." "I don't care about any of that," Thomas insisted. "I only care about you." "But I care about you," Eleanor said, pulling her hand away. "And that's why I can't let you ruin your life for mine." They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Eleanor spoke again. "I'll marry Charles," she said quietly. "I'll do my duty, but Thomas, I need you to promise me something." "Anything." "Promise me you'll forget about me. Promise me you'll move on, find someone else, build the life you deserve. Promise me you won't waste your life waiting for something that can never be." "I can't promise that," Thomas said. "Then promise me you'll try," Eleanor begged. "Please, Thomas, promise me you'll try." "I'll try," Thomas lied. Thomas didn't go to the wedding. He couldn't bear to. Instead, he sat alone in his small Brooklyn apartment, drinking whiskey and wondering if Eleanor was thinking about him as she walked down the aisle. At 4:17 p.m., he would always remember the exact time, there was a knock on his door. Thomas opened it to find a young boy, maybe 12 years old, holding an envelope. "Message for Thomas Bennett," the boy said. Thomas took the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper with Eleanor's handwriting. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I couldn't do it any differently. Please remember me kindly. Please be happy. E." Thomas folded the letter carefully and put it in his pocket. That night, he made a decision. He would do what Eleanor asked. He would try to move on. He left New York the next week. He moved to Boston, enrolled in architecture school, threw himself into his studies. He dated other women. He tried to forget. But every Tuesday at 3 o'clock, no matter where he was or what he was doing, he thought about Eleanor sitting on that bench in Central Park. 2 years passed. Thomas graduated, got a job at a prestigious firm, started building a career. He met a woman named Margaret, my grandmother, who was kind and smart and loved him. They got engaged. On the Tuesday before his wedding, Thomas received a letter. The postmark was from New York. The handwriting was Eleanor's. "Dear Thomas, I hope this letter finds you well. I heard through mutual acquaintances that you're getting married. I'm so happy for you. You deserve all the happiness in the world. I wanted you to know that I think about you often. Our Tuesdays in the park were the happiest moments of my life. You gave me hope when I had none, and kindness when I needed it most. I won't write to you again. It wouldn't be fair to either of our spouses. But I wanted you to know that you weren't forgotten. You will never be forgotten. Wishing you every happiness. Hey. Thomas put the letter in a box and tried to move on. He married Margaret. They had children. He built a successful career. His life was good. But every Tuesday at 3 o'clock, he still thought about Eleanor. 13 years later, Thomas was 35 years old, with a wife, 2 children, and a thriving architecture practice. He hadn't heard from Eleanor in over a decade. He thought that chapter of his life was closed. Then, on a Tuesday in October, he received another letter. Dear Thomas, I'm writing to you because I have no one else to turn to, and I remember you as someone who listened without judgment. My husband Charles died last month. Heart attack. He was 43 years old. Everyone tells me I should feel sad, but mostly I just feel nothing. We were married for 13 years, but we were never truly together. Not the way you and I were together in those brief Tuesdays long ago. I know I shouldn't be writing to you. You're married. You have a family. But today is Tuesday, and I found myself going to our bench in Central Park. I sat there for an hour, hoping somehow you might magically appear. Of course, you didn't. But I felt closer to you in that hour than I have to anyone in 13 years. I'm sorry for this rambling letter. I just needed someone to know that I'm still here, still remembering. Hey. Thomas didn't respond to the letter. He couldn't, but he kept it. The next Tuesday, another letter arrived, and the Tuesday after that, and the one after that. Eleanor wrote to him every Tuesday for 3 years. The letters were never long, never demanding. They were just updates, thoughts, memories, the record of a lonely woman's life. She wrote about her father's death, about the mansion she had inherited, about the emptiness of her days. She wrote about books she was reading, concerts she attended alone, thoughts that kept her up at night. And she always ended the same way. I went to our bench today, same time. You weren't there, but I'll be there next Tuesday. I always am. E. Thomas never responded, but he read every letter. He kept them all in a shoebox hidden in his office. Margaret never knew. He told himself he was being kind by not responding. If he wrote back, it would only encourage her. She needed to move on, and so did he. But the truth was more complicated. Part of him loved receiving those letters. They were a connection to a time in his life when everything felt possible, when he was young and in love and believed love could conquer anything. Every Tuesday at 3 o'clock, Thomas would stop whatever he was doing and think about Eleanor sitting on that bench in Central Park, waiting for him. The letters stopped suddenly in March 1968. Thomas didn't realize it at first. He had gotten used to them arriving every Tuesday. But when 2 weeks passed without a letter, and then 3, and then a month, he began to worry. He told himself it was good that she had stopped. Maybe she had finally moved on, found someone else, built a new life. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. In May, he received a letter, but it wasn't from Eleanor, it was from a lawyer. Dear Mr. Bennett, I am writing on behalf of the estate of Eleanor Whitmore, née Ashford, who passed away on March 19, 1968. Mrs. Whitmore left specific instructions in her will regarding you. She asked that this letter be delivered to you, along with a small item she wished you to have. Please contact my office at your earliest convenience to arrange delivery. Sincerely, Robert Harrison, Esq. Thomas's hands shook as he read the letter. Eleanor was dead. She had been dead for over a month, and he hadn't known. He called the lawyer's office that afternoon. 3 days later, a package arrived. Inside was a small velvet box and a letter, Eleanor's final letter. Thomas opened the letter first. Dear Thomas, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. I'm writing this letter to be delivered after my death because there are things I need to tell you, and I was never brave enough to say them while I was alive. I loved you. I loved you from that first Tuesday in Central Park, and I never stopped. Not when I married Charles. Not during all those years we were apart. Not ever. I went to that bench every Tuesday for 16 years. Even after I stopped writing to you, I still went. Every Tuesday at 3 o'clock, I sat there and remembered you. Remembered us. Remembered the life we could have had if I had been braver. I never asked you to come because I knew you had moved on. You had a wife, children, a life. I had no right to intrude on that. But I went anyway because those hours on that bench were when I felt most alive. When I felt closest to the person I was supposed to be. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. Please don't feel guilty. You gave me the greatest gift anyone ever gave me. You made me feel seen, heard, and loved for who I really was, not for who my father wanted me to be. The box contains something I've kept all these years. I want you to have it. Thank you for those Tuesdays, Thomas. They were the best days of my life. All my love always. Eleanor. Thomas opened the velvet box with trembling hands. Inside was a small pocket watch. He recognized it immediately. It was his watch, the one he had been wearing during those summer Tuesdays in 1952. He had lost it sometime that fall and had assumed it had simply fallen out of his pocket somewhere. He opened the watch. Inside the cover, engraved in Eleanor's delicate handwriting, was a single line. Every Tuesday, 3:00, I'll be waiting. E. Eleanor had taken his watch. She had kept it all those years. She had carried it with her as she sat on that bench every Tuesday, waiting for him. Thomas sat down heavily, the watch clutched in his hand. He thought about Eleanor, beautiful, trapped Eleanor, sitting alone on that bench for 16 years. Waiting, always waiting. He had never come. My grandmother finished the story and looked at me, tears running down her wrinkled cheeks. Your grandfather told me everything after Eleanor died, she said. He came home one day with that package and just broke down. He confessed it all. The meetings in the park, the letters, everything. Were you angry? I asked. At first, yes, Grandma admitted. I was furious. But then I read Eleanor's letters and I understood. Your grandfather never betrayed me, David. He loved me. But Eleanor was something different. She was a road not taken, a life he didn't live. And for her, he was the same thing. Did Grandpa ever go to the bench? I asked. After she died. Grandma nodded. Every Tuesday for the rest of his life. At 3 o'clock, he would leave whatever he was doing and go to Central Park. He would sit on that bench for exactly 1 hour. He never missed a Tuesday, not once in 46 years. 46 years? I whispered, doing the math. Eleanor died in 1968. Grandpa died this year. He went every week for 46 years. Every single Tuesday, Grandma confirmed. He said it was the least he could do. She had waited for him for 16 years. He would wait for her for the rest of his life. But why didn't he go while she was alive? I asked, frustrated. If he loved her, why didn't he just go? Because he loved me too, Grandma said simply. And he loved his children, your father and your aunt. He loved the life we built together. Going to see Eleanor would have meant risking all of that. So he made a choice. He chose his family. But he regretted it, I said. Every day, Grandma agreed. But he never regretted his choice to stay with me. Those two things can both be true. He could love his life and still grieve the life he didn't have. I looked down at the letters in my hands. 47 letters, 47 Tuesdays. 47 times Eleanor had sat alone on a bench, hopping. What happened to her? I asked. How did she die? Grandma's face darkened. Officially, it was heart failure, but the truth, she hesitated. The truth is, I think she died of loneliness. The autopsy showed she had been in perfect health. Her heart just stopped. She died of a broken heart, I said. In a way, yes. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I asked the question that had been building in my mind. Grandma, where's the watch? The one Eleanor gave back to him. Grandma reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. She handed it to me. I opened it. Inside was the pocket watch, still ticking after all these years. I opened the cover and read the inscription. Every Tuesday, 3:00, I'll be waiting. E. Your grandfather asked to be buried with it, Grandma said, but I thought maybe you should have it instead, so you'd remember. Remember what? I asked. That love isn't simple. That sometimes we make choices that break our hearts but save our lives. That loyalty and longing can exist in the same heart. That every choice we make closes one door while opening another. She paused, looking out the window. And that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is keep waiting. Keep hopping, even when we know the person we're waiting for will never come. The next Tuesday, 3:00 p.m. I took the letters and the watch with me when I left my grandmother's house. I couldn't stop thinking about Eleanor, sitting on that bench every Tuesday for 16 years. About my grandfather, spending 46 years going to that same bench after she was gone. It was Monday night when I made my decision. The next day, Tuesday, I called in sick to work. At 2:30 p.m., I took the subway to Central Park. I had looked up the location from one of Eleanor's letters. She had been specific about which bench it was. At exactly 3 o'clock, I sat down on the bench. It was a beautiful spring day, much like that day in 1952 when my grandfather and Eleanor first met. The park was full of people, joggers, tourists, families with children. But the bench was empty except for me. I took out my grandfather's pocket watch and held it in my hand. The inscription blurred as tears filled my eyes. Every Tuesday, 3:00, I'll be waiting. Eleanor had kept waiting, even when she knew he would never come, even when it broke her heart over and over again. She had kept her promise. And my grandfather had finally come every Tuesday for 46 years. But by then, she was gone. I thought about all the Tuesdays they had missed, the life they could have had together if circumstances had been different, if Eleanor had been born to a different family, if my grandfather had been richer, if society had been less rigid, if. But then I thought about something my grandmother had said. Every choice we make closes one door while opening another. If my grandfather had run away with Eleanor, I wouldn't exist. My father wouldn't have been born. My whole family line would have ended before it began. Was that selfish of me to think? That I was glad my grandfather had chosen the life that led to my existence, even though it meant Eleanor spent 16 years waiting alone. I didn't know. I still don't know. I sat on that bench for exactly 1 hour, from 3 o'clock until 4. I watched people pass by, businessmen checking their phones, mothers pushing strollers, teenagers holding hands. Lives being lived, choices being made, doors opening and closing. When 4 o'clock came, I stood up to leave. That's when I noticed something carved into the back of the bench, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. T+E, every Tuesday forever. My grandfather had carved it. I don't know when, maybe in those first years after Eleanor died, maybe more recently. But he had left this mark, this proof that they had existed, that their love had been real even if it was impossible. I pulled out a pen, and below the carving, I added one more line. She waited, he came, love remembered. DB. It wasn't much, but it was something. A testament to the two people who had loved each other across an impossible divide, who had kept faith even when faith seemed pointless. The truth about love. 6 months later. I still go to that bench sometimes. Not every Tuesday. I don't have that kind of dedication. But when I'm having a hard day, when life feels complicated and unclear, I go there and sit for a while. I've learned things from Eleanor and my grandfather's story. Things I'm still processing, still trying to understand. I've learned that love doesn't always mean being together. Sometimes love means making the hard choice to stay apart, to protect the other person from the consequences of being with you. I've learned that you can be loyal to one person and still carry another in your heart. That loving someone doesn't mean you don't love anyone else. That the human heart is bigger and more complicated than we usually admit. I've learned that waiting isn't always weakness. Eleanor waited because it was the only thing she had control over. She couldn't make my grandfather come, but she could keep showing up. She could keep the faith. And I've learned that sometimes the most profound love stories are the ones that don't have happy endings. That tragedy doesn't diminish love. Sometimes it deepens it. My grandmother is still alive. She's 90 years old now. Sometimes I visit her and we talk about my grandfather, about Eleanor, about love and choice and regret. Do you ever wish he had gone to her? I asked her once, while she was still alive. Grandma thought about it for a long time before answering. No, she said finally, because that wouldn't have been my Tom. The Tom I loved was a man who kept his promises, who honored his commitments, who chose duty over desire. If he had been the kind of man who would have left me for Eleanor, he wouldn't have been the man I fell in love with. But he was sad, I pointed out. He carried that sadness his whole life. Yes, Grandma agreed. He was sad, but he was also happy. He loved me. He loved his children and grandchildren. He had a full, rich life. The sadness was just one part of it, not the whole thing. Do you think they're together now? I asked, feeling foolish even as I said it. Grandma smiled. I like to think so. I like to think that somewhere on some eternal Tuesday at 3 o'clock, they're sitting on that bench together, finally together, no more waiting. I have the pocket watch now. I carry it with me everywhere. Sometimes when it's Tuesday and the clock hits 3, I take it out and open the cover. I read the inscription. Every Tuesday, 3:00, I'll be waiting. E. And I think about Eleanor, alone on that bench. I think about my grandfather, haunted by a choice he had to make. I think about my grandmother, loving a man who carried another woman in his heart. I think about all the Tuesdays that were missed, and all the Tuesdays that were kept. And I understand that this is what love looks like in the real world. Not simple, not easy, not always happy, but real, achingly, beautifully, tragically real. Eleanor kept waiting for my grandfather, every Tuesday, for 16 years. And then my grandfather kept waiting for Eleanor, every Tuesday, for 46 years. They never stopped waiting. Even death didn't stop them. Because that's what love does. It waits, it hopes, it endures. Even when there's no rational reason to hope. Even when waiting breaks your heart. Love waits. Every Tuesday. At 3 o'clock. Forever. The end. Note: this story is about the choices we make and the roads we don't take. It's about loving more than one person in different ways. It's about duty and desire, loyalty and longing, reality and what might have been. Eleanor and Thomas's love was real, but so was Thomas's love for Margaret. Both loves were true. Both mattered. That's what makes this story tragic. Not that they loved each other, but that their love existed in a world where it couldn't be acted upon without hurting others. We all make choices that close doors. We all wonder about the roads not taken. And sometimes we carry those ghosts with us for our entire lives. But that doesn't mean we made the wrong choices. It just means we're human. Discussion, QESDONS. Was Thomas right to choose Margaret over Eleanor? Could there be a right choice in this situation? Was Eleanor's waiting for 16 years romantic or tragic? Where is the line between devotion and self-destruction? Should Thomas have visited Eleanor while she was alive after his wife knew about her? Would it have changed anything? Can you love two people at once? Thomas loved both Margaret and Eleanor. Is that possible, or was one love more real than the other? Was it fair to Margaret that Thomas carried Eleanor in his heart their entire marriage? Why do you think Eleanor never moved on? Was she unable, or did she choose not to? What do you think the right ending would have been? Or is the right ending that there is no happy ending? If you were Eleanor, would you have waited? For how long?